Hello guys. In this video I'm going to be building these battle droids from the Star Wars universe. Now I know that Star Wars is not everyone's cup of tea and that 3D printing is not everyone's cup of tea, but I do like to show different things on the channel, so I thought I'd show you how these turned out. These models were acquired from the website Gambody, and I actually printed and built them quite a while ago when I was still getting a hang of my resin 3D printer. One of the tips I would give people who are new to 3D printing is to perhaps invest in some good quality models like these. One thing I found is I had a lot of print failures from various models that I downloaded from Thingiverse and Cults 3D, and it turns out that while there are quite a lot of decent free models, there are also quite a lot of them that just don't print very well. They're not really designed for 3D printing. And I found that lots of print failures with these models put me off a little bit. Gambody is a website that has 3D models from all kinds of science fiction and fantasy franchises. Although with hindsight I think they are definitely not licensed. So as you can see here we've got a variety of models from various science fiction franchises. One thing I do like about this site is it gives us a lot of information about the models before we buy them. You get a good parts breakdown, you get separate models for FDM printers and for resin printers, and a really clear description of what to expect and what scale the model is. This particular droid comes with two different leg and two different arm positions, as you can see illustrated in the images here. And of course 3D printing is just perfect for something like this, because if you're a fan of Star Wars you'll know that these battle droids existed in their tens of thousands in the films. I'm not going to print that many, but of course I can print as many as I want to. Once the 3D file is downloaded, you need to import it into your slicer software. In general, for resin printing, 45 degrees is a good orientation to avoid layer lines. Although of course this is quite a complicated model and I didn't quite get that right on this early attempt. Once they're printed, the parts come out like so with the supports on them. Here you can see one of the legs and the blaster. And here you can see two bodies that I printed. It's best to cut those off with snips rather than pull them off, but you will still need to do a bit of cleanup. As you can see, the parts slot together easily, but you can see on the back of the legs there the points that I do need to sand down and clean up. I printed 4 of these in total, and when I was happy with them I gave them a coat of Halford's car primer. Then a base coat of Tamiya XF69, followed by a coat of XF57 buff. As you can see, I didn't do as good a job as I should have done really there on the back of the legs, cleaning up those support marks. These battle droids have different coloured shoulders for different roles. I like the sort of a dark oxide red colour for the security droids. So I'm brush painting these with Vallejo Model Color, mixed with a small amount of water. Then I gave one of the droids a yellow set of markings for the commander. After a gloss coat of Tamiya TS13, I mixed some Abtai Lung 502 sepia oil paint with some odourless thinner and used that to apply a pin wash. As always with a pin wash, you don't need to be too worried about making any mistakes or getting any excess on the model, because you can clean it up with a brush dampened in odourless thinner. and you have a long working time with these oil paints. In terms of the build process, that was essentially everything. However, I did want some sort of base for them to stand on, if only because with those really thin legs and the ever so slight warping that occurred in the 3D printing, they don't freestand. So to achieve that, I took a couple of sheets of XPS foam. I figured that one layer thick would not be sturdy enough. I glued the two pieces of foam together with PVA glue, cut some wood for the border, and attached that in the same way. After leaving that to dry overnight, I went to my favourite acrylic ground paste, which is this AK Terrains dry ground. I use this for so many things, and in this case I put a thin layer over the top of our diorama. While the base was still wet, I dropped in a variety of stones. By doing this now, the stones should stay attached when the acrylic paste dries. This was painted with a couple of coats of paint. Originally I was going to go with a grassland setting, so I painted everything in XF69 NATO black and then XF52, which is flat earth. However, then I decided to go to more of a sort of a deserty, kind of more Martian terrain. So over the top of that flat earth I painted a mix of XF52 flat earth and XF7 red. I really like the way this came out. It's got that kind of slightly red glow that just looks like you've got your lights on a slightly warm setting or something. It's really exactly what I was looking for. I then took a variety of red and brown shades of acrylic paint from Ammo by Meg. I put these into a wet palette and let them blend just randomly, and picked out each of those individual stones. By letting those paints mix just freely on the palette, hopefully each stone should be a slightly different colour. You can see on some of the bigger stones I go back to the palette and pick up a second shade just to break it up. Once that was fairly dry, which doesn't take long with acrylics, I took one of the orangey shades and did a dry brush all over the terrain. You can see that gives a subtle highlighting to those raised areas. Originally I was going to use pigments all over that base to give it a soily, earthy effect, but in the end I decided I liked the base as it was. However, I did use this Vietnam earth pigment over the feet of the droids to give the impression that they've kicked up some of that dust from the surface. That was put over their feet and the lower parts of their legs. And once that was done, the model was complete. There we go guys, that was my build of these 3D printed Star Wars Battle Droids. These have been sitting on my desk for quite a while now, and to be honest, if I were to print them again I'd probably do a better job of it. But I did want to get them painted and onto a base, and at least I can sort of get them out the way then and say that I've done them. I'm quite pleased with the way they turned out. Maybe I could have given the droids a matte varnish afterwards, but I do quite like that semi-shiny appearance that they've got. I've been doing quite a lot of 3D printed stuff recently, but don't worry, I am still working on some model kits. It's just that plastic injected moulded kits do tend to take longer to build and paint than these 3D printed kits. But I've got plenty coming up, so do stay tuned if you would like to see some of the models which you can see on the screen now. And before I go, I would like to say a huge thank you to everyone for watching, and of course thank you to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members for their ongoing support. Thank you very much guys, it's hugely appreciated. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and until then, have fun modelling.